I never slept with him. I never touched him. I never planned to cross any line. So why does this feel like betrayal? It started with something small and harmless, something I didn't think I needed to mention. Then my partner looked at me differently, not angry, disappointed. And I knew I had changed something I couldn't easily fix. I'm a woman in my early 30s, in a long-term relationship that most people would call stable. We lived together, share routines, and had never seriously questioned our trust before this. I wasn't looking for problems. I wasn't bored, lonely, or searching for attention. I truly believed I was just being supportive in a situation that didn't involve my relationship at all. But somewhere along the way, small decisions turned into silence. Silence turned into distance. And distance turned into something that felt uncomfortably close to betrayal, without any physical cheating involved. Before I continue, I want to know what you think. Where do you draw the line between support and disloyalty? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy real, honest Reddit-style stories about relationships and moral dilemmas, subscribe and share this story with someone who would have strong opinions about it. It started on a day that felt completely ordinary. I stayed late at work because a deadline moved up at the last minute. Nothing unusual. Half the office had already left, and I was mentally counting how many minutes it would take to get home and change into something comfortable. That's when he stopped by my desk. We weren't close friends. We worked on the same team, exchanged polite jokes, complained about work the way everyone does. If you had asked me that morning whether he would become part of a problem in my relationship, I would have said no without hesitation. He asked if I had a minute. His tone wasn't dramatic, just tired. I said yes, assuming it was about work. Instead, he sat down and said he was having a hard time, not in a vague way, in a personal way. He said his relationship was falling apart. He said he didn't know who to talk to. He said he felt embarrassed even saying it out loud. I remember thinking, this is awkward, but also, this is human. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer advice. I just let him talk. I told myself that was the right thing to do. That being kind didn't require permission from anyone. Before he left, he said, "Thanks for not making me feel stupid about this." That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. When I finally left work, my partner had already texted me asking when I'd be home. I replied, "Leaving now. Long day." That was true, but it wasn't complete. At home, my partner asked how work was. I said, busy, same as always. I didn't mention the conversation. I told myself it wasn't important. I told myself it wasn't my story to share. I didn't feel like I was hiding anything. I felt like I was choosing what mattered. But looking back, that was the first moment I separated part of my day from my relationship without asking whether I should. I went to bed thinking nothing had changed. I was wrong. What would you have done in my place? The next day felt normal enough that I almost forgot about the conversation. At work, he acted the same as always. Professional, focused. No awkwardness, no follow-up. That actually reassured me. It made me think the night before had been a one-time thing. Just a moment where someone needed to talk, and I happened to be there. Then, that evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say thanks again for listening yesterday." I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. Not because the message crossed any line. It didn't. But because it felt personal in a way that didn't belong to work anymore. I answered anyway. No problem. Hope today was better. That should have been the end of it. Instead, he replied again, then again. He said the day had been rough, that his head wouldn't shut off, that nights were the hardest. I kept my responses short at first, trying to stay neutral. but it felt cold to cut someone off when they were clearly struggling. My partner was sitting next to me on the couch, half watching a show, half scrolling on their phone. I noticed myself angling my screen slightly toward me, not hiding it exactly, just keeping it mine. "Who's that?" my partner asked casually. "Someone from work," I said. "They're dealing with stuff." It was an honest answer, just not the full one. My partner nodded and went back to the show, but I felt a tightness in my chest, a small awareness that I had just decided how much to share and how much to keep to myself. The messages went on for a bit. Nothing dramatic, nothing inappropriate, just someone unloading thoughts they didn't know where else to put. At one point, he wrote, "I don't usually talk like this. I just feel safe with you." I didn't respond to that part. I sent something practical instead. "Try to get some rest. Everything feels worse at night." But that word stayed with me. Safe. When the conversation finally slowed, I locked my phone and placed it face down on the table. I told myself it was a habit. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Later, when we were getting ready for bed, my partner asked, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." That was true. I was tired. But not for the reason I gave. As I lay there, I replayed the messages in my head. Not because they were exciting, but because I liked how they made me feel. Capable, steady, important to someone outside my relationship. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. But I noticed something that made me uncomfortable. I was relieved my partner hadn't asked more questions, and I didn't want to admit why. Do you think I crossed a line here? After that night, the messages didn't stop. They didn't escalate quickly either, which is part of why I didn't take them seriously at first. They just became consistent. A short message in the morning. Something like, "Hope today goes better." Nothing during work hours. Then something again later, usually after dinner. It was easy to tell myself this was harmless. There was no flirting, no compliments, no obvious boundary being crossed. If anyone had read the messages out of context, they would have looked supportive, normal, almost boring. But my behavior around them wasn't normal. I started checking my phone more often. Not obsessively, but enough that I noticed it myself. I'd feel a small pull to see if he had replied. Not excitement exactly, more like responsibility, like I was supposed to be available. My partner noticed the shift before I admitted it to myself. They asked why I seemed distracted, asked why I kept glancing at my phone, asked if something stressful was happening at work. Each time, I answered honestly, but selectively. Just deadlines. Just tired. Nothing serious. All true. All incomplete. One night, my partner's phone died while we were sitting on the couch. Without thinking, they reached for mine and said, "Can I use yours for a second?" My reaction was instant. "I'll do it," I said, already pulling the phone back toward me. The room went quiet in that subtle way that makes you aware of everything at once. "Why?" they asked. I laughed, trying to sound casual. "I already have it unlocked." They didn't push. They didn't accuse me. They just nodded and leaned back. But something changed after that. Later that night, when my partner went to shower, I picked up my phone and turned off message previews on my lock screen. It felt practical, preventative. I told myself it was about privacy, not secrecy. Still, when I finished, I sat there staring at the screen, feeling uneasy. I wasn't hiding messages because they were inappropriate. I was hiding them because I didn't want to explain why they mattered. That realization made my stomach drop. When I got into bed, my partner turned toward me and asked, "Are we okay?" "Yes," I said immediately, but my answer came too fast, too smooth. Because for the first time, I understood that this wasn't just about helping someone anymore. It was about how easily I had started separating parts of my life, and how natural that separation had begun to feel. And once something starts to feel normal, it's much harder to stop. Was I wrong for not shutting this down right there? The first time it stopped feeling theoretical was when he asked if we could talk in person. The message came in during the afternoon. Simple. Careful. Do you have time to grab a coffee after work? I think it would help. I didn't respond right away. I read it, put my phone down, picked it back up, and read it again. People from work get coffee all the time. That wasn't strange. But this didn't feel like coworkers catching up. It felt like an extension of everything that had already been happening quietly. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself that refusing would feel unnecessarily harsh. So I said yes. I didn't tell my partner immediately, not because I had decided to hide it, but because I hadn't decided how to explain it yet. That detail mattered more than I wanted to admit. Right before leaving work, I texted my partner, "Grabbing coffee with someone from work. I'll be home a little later." They replied, "Okay." Just one word. No questions, no pushback. And instead of feeling relieved, I felt uneasy, like I had just crossed something invisible. At the cafe, he looked different than he did at work. Less put together, more exposed. He thanked me for coming in a way that felt heavier than the situation required, like my presence itself was doing something important. He talked about feeling alone, about not recognizing his own reactions anymore, about how embarrassing it was to need someone else's steadiness. I listened. Again. At one point, he said, "You're the only person who doesn't make me feel like I'm overreacting." That sentence landed hard. I felt useful, needed, seen in a way that wasn't dramatic or romantic, but personal, and I hated how much that feeling settled into me. When we stood up to leave, there was a pause. Then he hugged me. It wasn't long. It wasn't inappropriate in an obvious way, but it was close, comfortable, like something that belonged to people who knew each other well. I hugged him back. The second I did, I knew I would replay it later. Not because I wanted more, but because I hadn't stopped it. Driving home, I kept telling myself nothing had happened, and technically, nothing had. But I also knew that if my partner had seen that moment, I wouldn't have known how to explain it without minimizing it. When I got home, my partner asked, "How was coffee?" "Fine," I said. They looked at me for a second longer than usual. "You seem off." "I'm just tired," I replied. Again, not a lie. Just not the truth they were asking for. That night, I noticed myself checking my phone more often, waiting. When his message came later, something small, something unnecessary, my heart jumped before I could stop it. And that's when I finally admitted something to myself. I wasn't just being supportive anymore. I was emotionally involved in a way that demanded space, attention, and silence. I lay in bed next to my partner, staring at the ceiling, realizing that whatever line I thought existed had already blurred, and I was the one who let it happen. Do you think I crossed a line here? After the coffee, everything felt slightly out of place, even when nothing obvious was happening. On the surface, my days looked the same. Same job, same routines, same relationship. But inside, I felt like I was constantly managing something, watching myself, choosing words more carefully, deciding what to share and what to keep to myself. My partner noticed before I said anything. They didn't accuse me. They didn't raise their voice. They just started asking questions that were harder to answer without thinking. "You've been quiet lately. You seem distracted. Is something stressing you out?" Each time, I reassured them. I said, work was draining. I said I was tired. I said everything was fine. But the truth was, I was emotionally exhausted in a way I hadn't been before. I was carrying someone else's weight on top of my own, and I hadn't asked my partner if they were okay with that. One night, after dinner, my partner looked at me and asked, "Are you closer to him than you are to me right now?" The question caught me completely off guard. I wanted to say no immediately. I wanted to sound confident, offended even. But there was a pause before I answered. Just a second. Long enough? "That's not fair," I said. They didn't argue. They just said, "It's a yes or no question." I felt cornered. Defensive. I told them they were reading into things. I said I was just being supportive. I said it didn't mean anything. My partner listened quietly, and then said something that hit harder than I expected. "You keep explaining why it's harmless, but you don't explain why you're hiding it." I didn't have a good answer. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. A message from him. Nothing urgent, nothing necessary. But I answered anyway, almost automatically. I didn't mention it to my partner, not because I wanted to deceive them, but because I didn't want another conversation where I had to justify myself. That's when it became clear to me. I wasn't choosing silence to protect my relationship anymore. I was choosing silence to avoid discomfort. The next morning, my partner suggested we spend the weekend together. No phones, no distractions, just time. A reset. I agreed. Out loud, without hesitation. But later that same day, I got a message from him saying, "Tomorrow might be rough. I don't know if I'll be okay." I stared at the screen, feeling pulled in two directions. And without stopping to think about what that choice meant, I replied, "We can talk." In that moment, I knew I had crossed from reacting into choosing, and I wasn't choosing my partner. Was I wrong for saying yes again when I knew what it could cost? Saturday was supposed to be ours. We had talked about it during the week. Not as a big plan, just a quiet agreement. No work, no phones, no distractions. Time together, the kind we hadn't really had in a while. I woke up already tense. My phone was on the nightstand, screen dark. I hadn't checked it yet, but I knew there would be a message. That knowledge sat heavy in my chest, like something unfinished waiting for me to acknowledge it. My partner was still asleep. I watched them for a moment. The familiar comfort of their presence mixed with a sharp sense of guilt. This was the person who knew my habits, my moods, my history. The person who trusted me without needing proof. I picked up my phone anyway. There it was. A message from him, sent early that morning. "Today feels really hard. Can you talk later?" I didn't answer right away. I put the phone back down. I told myself today was different. Today was for my relationship. We had breakfast together. We talked about small things. I tried to be present, but my attention felt split. Like part of me was constantly checking the time. Waiting. My partner noticed. "You seem somewhere else," they said gently. "I'm okay," I replied. "Just tired." That answer was becoming too easy. A little later, I said I needed to run out for a bit. I didn't explain what for. I didn't lie outright. I just didn't fill in the blanks. They looked disappointed, not angry. "I thought today was for us," they said quietly. "It is," I said too quickly. "I won't be long." I took the call in my car, parked a few blocks away. I told myself that made it better, that at least I wasn't hiding inside our home, even though the only reason I wasn't inside was so my partner wouldn't hear. He sounded worse than before. His voice was shaky. He said things felt overwhelming. He said he didn't know who else to call. I listened. I reassured. I stayed on the line longer than I meant to. At one point, he said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." That sentence didn't feel like gratitude. It felt like dependence. And instead of stopping it, I absorbed it. When I got home, my partner was sitting on the couch exactly where I had left them. The TV was on, but they weren't watching it. "Was it him?" they asked. I hesitated. "Yes," I said. They nodded slowly and said, "So that's where I rank." "That's not fair," I said immediately, defensive without thinking. They stood up, calm in a way that made my stomach drop. "I asked you for one day," they said. "Just one." I tried to explain. I said it was serious. I said someone needed me. I said it wasn't what they thought. My partner listened and then said, "You keep choosing him when you say you're choosing me." That night, we went to bed without resolving anything. They turned away from me. I lay there staring at the wall, fully aware that I had made a choice, even if I didn't want to call it that. And for the first time, I wondered if fixing this would require letting go of something I had grown used to holding. Do you think I crossed a line by leaving that day? The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They crept in quietly. At work, I started noticing small changes, conversations that stopped when I walked by. A different tone in meetings. Nothing obvious enough to call out, but enough to feel like something had shifted, and I hadn't been invited to acknowledge it. Then my manager asked if I had a minute. They didn't accuse me of anything. They didn't mention names. They talked about professional boundaries and keeping personal matters from affecting the team. They asked if everything was okay. I said yes. I walked out of that office with my chest tight, realizing that what I thought was contained had already spilled beyond me. Even if no one knew details, they knew there was something. That evening, the apartment felt quiet in a way I hadn't experienced before. My partner was there, but distant, polite, like someone who had already started pulling back emotionally to protect themselves. I tried to act normal, asked about their day, made small talk. They answered, but without warmth. Later, I realized my phone wasn't on the counter where I'd left it. I found my partner sitting at the table, my phone in front of them, not scrolling, not shaking, just holding it. "I didn't mean to," they said before I could speak. It lit up. I saw the name, and I couldn't unsee it. My heart dropped so fast I felt dizzy. "I didn't cheat," I said immediately. Too fast, too rehearsed. They looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "You keep saying that like it's the only way to betray someone." They handed the phone back to me. Their hands were steady. Their voice wasn't raised. "I don't care that you were kind," they continued. "I care that you were kind in a way that pushed me out." I tried to explain. I talked about timing, about empathy, about not wanting to abandon someone in crisis, about how it never became physical. They listened. Then they asked one question that cut through every explanation. "Would you have told me any of this if I hadn't seen it?" I opened my mouth to answer, and stopped, because the honest answer was no. Not yet. Maybe later. Maybe when it felt safer. Maybe when I could control how it sounded. The silence stretched between us. Then my partner stood up and said, "I need space." Not as a threat, not as drama, as a boundary. They packed a bag and left that night. No slammed doors, no shouting, just distance. After they left, my phone buzzed, a message from him. "You seem distant. Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, realizing how distorted everything had become. The person at the center of the problem was now checking on me because of it. And for the first time, I couldn't pretend this was about helping anymore. This was about choices, and I had made them. Do you think it was already too late at this point? The apartment didn't feel like mine after my partner left. Everything was still there. Their shoes by the door, their mug in the sink, their side of the bed untouched. But it all felt temporary now. like I was living in a pause instead of a home. That night, I didn't sleep. My phone buzzed a few times. Messages from him, careful ones, hesitant ones. Did I cause this? You don't have to answer if now's not a good time. I just want to make sure you're okay. Before, those messages would have pulled me in immediately. They would have made me feel needed, important. Now they made my chest tighten. Because for the first time, I saw them clearly, not as support, but as pressure. Emotional weight I had allowed myself to carry without asking what it was costing me. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. I wanted to say it wasn't his fault. I wanted to protect him from feeling guilty. I wanted to still be the good person in this story, but that urge felt dishonest now. I finally replied, "Things at home aren't okay. I need to step back." The response came almost immediately. "I knew this would happen. I'm sorry for putting you in this position." Then, a few seconds later, "I don't know who else to talk to." That line hit me harder than I expected, because it sounded less like honesty and more like a hook. Not intentional, not manipulative, just human desperation looking for something to hold on to. And I realized something uncomfortable. I had trained him to lean on me, not with words, but with availability, with consistency, with the way I never pushed back. I put my phone down and sat on the floor, my back against the couch, trying to pinpoint the exact moment this stopped being about kindness. It wasn't the coffee. It wasn't the hug. It was the first time I chose secrecy because honesty felt inconvenient. The next day, my partner texted me, "I'm not trying to punish you. I just need to know if you understand why this hurt." I read that message over and over. Understanding meant admitting I had caused damage without meaning to. That my intentions didn't protect anyone. That being needed had started to matter more to me than being honest. That night, I sent one more message to him. "I should have set boundaries earlier. I didn't. That's on me. I can't keep doing this." There was no immediate reply, and for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like relief. It felt like consequence. Do you think setting boundaries this late still meant anything? The next day felt heavier than the ones before it. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. There were no messages pulling at my attention. No crisis waiting for a response. Just quiet. And the space to think about everything I had avoided. My partner asked if we could talk that evening. Not to decide anything. Just to talk. I spent the day replaying conversations in my head, trying to organize my thoughts into something that sounded reasonable, something that didn't make me look careless or selfish, something that would explain how this happened without making it sound as bad as it was. When we finally sat down, they looked exhausted, not angry, not cold, just tired in a way that comes from holding something in for too long. They didn't accuse me. They said, "I need you to tell me the whole truth, not the edited version." So I did. I told them how it started. I told them about the first conversation at work, the messages, the coffee, the call I took in the car. I didn't skip the parts that made me uncomfortable. I didn't soften it. I admitted something I hadn't said out loud before. "I liked feeling important," I said. Not romantically, but in a way that made me feel needed when I didn't realize I was missing that. My partner nodded slowly, like they had already reached that conclusion on their own. They asked, "Did you ever want it to become more?" I took a breath before answering. "I don't think I wanted that," I said, "but I also didn't stop it when it started costing us." That answer seemed to land hard. They told me the part that hurt the most wasn't him. It was the way I made them feel replaceable. Like someone else got my attention while they got my explanations. Then they asked the question I had been dreading. "Are you willing to cut contact completely?" I hesitated. Not because I wanted to keep talking to him, but because cutting contact meant admitting, fully, that what I did crossed a serious line. It meant consequences, not just apologies. The pause was brief, but it was there. And my partner noticed. They exhaled and said, "That hesitation tells me you're still choosing how you want to be seen over how this actually feels." I didn't argue. I said I needed a little time to think. As soon as I said it, I saw the shift in their expression. Not anger, acceptance. Like they were already preparing for an ending I hadn't fully faced yet. And I realized something painful in that moment. Even now, I was still deciding instead of owning. Do you think my hesitation said more than anything else I told them? I didn't need the time I asked for. By the next morning, the answer was already there, clearer than anything I had told myself over the past weeks. I had just been afraid to say it out loud because saying it meant accepting the damage was real. I sent him one last message. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't leave the door open. I said I was sorry for not setting boundaries sooner, that I had crossed a line even if it wasn't physical, and that I couldn't have personal contact outside of work anymore. I told him this wasn't about blame. It was about responsibility. The reply came later. "I thought you cared more than this." I stared at that sentence for a long time, because I did care. That was never the question. The question was what I was willing to risk in order to keep feeling needed, and the answer to that question had already hurt someone who didn't deserve it. At work, I kept things strictly professional. Polite, distant, clean. It felt uncomfortable at first, like I was being cold, but over time, it felt honest. When I met my partner again, I didn't argue. I didn't defend my intentions. I didn't hide behind the fact that I never slept with anyone. I told them I understood why this felt like betrayal. I told them I had chosen secrecy over transparency and comfort over honesty. I told them I wasn't asking for forgiveness. I was asking for the chance to rebuild trust from the ground up, knowing that it might not be possible. They listened quietly. Then they said something I wasn't prepared for. "I believe you didn't mean to hurt me, but intention doesn't undo damage." They said they needed time. That time might lead to repair, or it might lead to walking away. They weren't punishing me. They were protecting themselves. We're still talking. Slowly, carefully. Some days feel hopeful. Some days feel fragile. There's no clear ending yet. But I know this much now. Loyalty isn't proven by avoiding the worst mistake. It's proven in the small, boring moments where honesty feels inconvenient and boundaries feel awkward. That's where I failed. And that's where I'm trying to do better. Do you think I made the right choice in the end? If you enjoy real, thought-provoking, Reddit-style stories, subscribe to the channel for more.